picture this scene with me. You're commuting into a UK city on your motorbike. You filter in past a load of standstill traffic and weaving in and out, which, by the way, by filtering, you are actively reducing that traffic. Then you hit a stretch of road that doesn't look like it's been properly maintained since your granddad's motorcycle was built. There's potholes everywhere, various cracks and ruts and divots, and it resembles more of a patchwork quilt than it does a British road. Now, in a car, that's a minor inconvenience and a bit uncomfortable, but on a motorcycle, that's an accident waiting to happen. You press on regardless, and that's when you see it on the way into the city, that big old sign. You are now entering a ULEZ zone, and you're going to be charged £12.50 for the privilege of riding in. It's exactly the same charge for your bike that it is for cars. Cars which are wider than you, heavier than you are, and produce more emissions than you do. And it's the reason that the traffic that you're filtering through exists in the first place. And then when you finally arrive in that city centre, park your bike and lock it up, you just spend the rest of the day and afternoon kind of worried and concerned that you might return to that parking space to find your bike is no longer there. And then you're at the mercy of the British law and policing system, where only 4% of people who are found with stolen vehicles will ever see a conviction. Welcome to motorcycling here in the UK. Now, I like to think that things aren't quite as bad as the picture that I've just painted, but based on the comments and feedback that you've given me in my previous videos, that is very much how many of you see motorcycling here in England. So I went away and I asked the question, why has the UK government made motorcycling so difficult? And does it actually want motorcycling to survive? Now let's start with some evidence. Actual hard factual evidence that, by all accounts, the UK government has ignored. The MCIA, also known as the Motorcycle Industry Association, submitted formal, written, hard evidence to the UK's Parliamentary Transport Select Committee. This wasn't a forum post or a blog post, it wasn't a tweet or a rant on social media, and it wasn't a YouTube video by one of their members of staff kind of just saying, bikes are well better for traffic, mate. It was actually well written, well thought out and well evidenced parliamentary evidence, presented the right way to the right people, and it said that if we manage to persuade just 10% of car drivers to switch from their normal everyday car to powered two wheels during their morning commute, congestion would drop by 40%. 40% less congestion for everyone, not just those that decided to switch from cars to bikes. That is a 40% reduction for absolutely every single one of us out on the road. If you push that 10% to 25% switching to bikes, well, congestion is eliminated entirely. Yeah, not just reduced, not just well managed, entirely gone. Just think about that for a minute. Because when was the last time a government transport policy and consultation produced a solution that eliminated the problem entirely? Exactly. It's never happened. That evidence that I'm talking about is on record. It's under parliamentary reference URB 0051. If you wanted to Google it, go ahead. If not, I'll drop a link to it in the description below. You can go check it out yourself. The evidence is on record, it exists, and it is there for everyone to see. The government literally asked for a solution to this congestion problem, and they got one. And yet, motorcycling is still largely absent from UK transport policy. There's been no large national strategy put behind it. There's been no meaningful integration into transport. There's been literally nothing, which is arguably more impressive than fixing the problem itself, because they've got the solution in front of themselves and they've actively just filed it away and ignored it. How can you have the solution there and then do nothing with it? It doesn't make any sense. Now, another thing that doesn't make a lot of sense in the world of motorcycling is ULEZ charges, because, well, to me, they're beautifully contradictory. Motorcycles are exempt from congestion charges. Why are they exempt? Well, it's because they don't cause congestion. They actively resolve the problem. That's a fact that is officially recognised, and it's right there in all of the policy, which is great news for us guys that ride motorcycles. But then those same motorcycles that we're riding are charged £12.50 a day to enter ULEZ zones, which is exactly the same as cars are charged. So if we try and look at that with some critical thinking, the bike isn't causing congestion, but they're paying to enter a zone designed to partly reduce congestion, and you produce roughly 30% less emissions than a standard car, but you're paying the same daily rate as a car which is producing 30% more emissions. Doesn't kind of add up, does it? Yet when we head further north to Scotland, motorcycles are fully exempt from low emission zone charges. Scotland have figured it out, whereas England, which has more traffic and more congestion, and presumably more people who could benefit from motorcycles being used more regularly every single day to ease the burden on congestion on our roads, have decided completely differently. And on top of that, when you start drilling into this policy, there's another little nugget of information in there which got my eyes twitching ever so slightly. It's the fact that the government guideline says that it's optional whether motorcycles are included in the clean air zones. It's an option. It's not an essential thing to include bikes in there. It's, like I say, it's optional, meaning they could not charge us. Nobody was forced to charge bikes, but local authorities have chosen to do it anyway, presumably because it helps their bottom line and it has absolutely nothing to do with congestion and clean air. But that's just the pessimist in me thinking. So what we end up with is a system where one arm of the policy is saying motorcycles are great for traffic and congestion, so we shouldn't charge them for the congestion zones. They should be exempt for those charges when they're entering those areas where we're trying to control the amount of traffic. But then the other arm is saying, but they also need punishing because they're bad for air pollution, despite being 30% more efficient than a car. So they've got to pay the £12.50. It's contradiction at its very best. Now, at this point, I want to hand to you guys. Has the ULEZ charge, clean air zones, anything like that ever meant that you as a rider have had to pay more for your weekly commute? Or has it changed the way that you ride in and around the cities that you live in? Drop your thoughts in the comments below because I'm genuinely interested, because obviously where I live up here in Cheshire, we currently don't have any of these ULEZ, clean air zones, congestion charge sorts of locations around us. So we're quite fortunate here, but I'd be interested to hear from you guys from the wider community. And whilst you're writing that comment, let's talk about another factor that's arguably doing more damage to the industry than any of the previous points I've talked about. And that is theft. Over the past decade, the charge rate for vehicle theft in the UK has dropped significantly. A couple of years ago, if you were caught twocking someone's vehicle, taking it without the owner's consent, breaking into cars, stealing them, stealing bikes and cars, and all, I'm talking about all motor vehicles, there was a 9.2% chance that you would get a criminal conviction if you were caught doing it. Now, even that, 9.2%, is a dismal conviction rate by any standard, but that is now down to an extraordinarily low 4 to 2.4%, depending on the county where the criminal activity had taken place. For context, that means that if your bike is stolen and the criminal is caught in possession of your bike, there is a better than 96% chance that absolutely nothing is going to happen to that person who took it. Even if they're caught, like I say, red-handed with the bike in their possession, there's a higher percentage possibility that they'll get a slap on the wrist and be sent on their way. When you couple that with the dismal capture rate of this sort of stuff, not only do most of the people that steal these bikes never get caught, but the ones that do don't get charged. So they just carry on. All whilst you get to spend an afternoon sat at home miserably on the phone to an insurance company explaining just how your pride and joy got taken, which, if you've ever been unfortunate enough to go through that process, you'll know it's about as fun as it sounds. Now, the MCIA will tell you that the volumes of theft are actually down some 9.4% compared to previous years. And I even reported on that in a video which I did, which you can watch up here at the pop-out banner, where I talk all about theft and what's happening and who's really paying. And it sounds great that they're down by that kind of 9.4%, until you hear that the recovery rates are also falling off a cliff. More bikes that are getting stolen are vanishing permanently than ever before. Most get shipped out of the country abroad, disappear and start a new life in another country. And that tends to happen before anyone's even noticed their bike's gone. So the chain reaction kind of goes something along the lines of there's a low prosecution rate, which means it's low risk for criminals. Low risk means more organised theft by those criminals. More theft means more insurance claims. And more claims means higher premiums for you and I. And then higher premiums mean that riders who want to get a bike can't justify the costs anymore. And then those riders who can no longer justify the costs sell their bikes and move on, and they just stop riding. The system has effectively made motorcycle theft a reasonable business model where everyone involved in it is profiteering off the back of you and I as riders. And look, since we're on the topic of the systems that are no longer fully protecting your bike and my bike, we need to be really, really honest about where that leaves us. As I've mentioned, criminal charge rates and convictions are sitting at an all-time low. And that means that the most reliable line of defense between our bikes being taken by thieves is going to be the actions that you and I take. Specifically, what lock that we use on the bikes when we're leaving it. And that is why I put all my faith in LITELOK with the LITELOK X1. I'm going to save you the full breakdown. There is a dedicated video which you can see at the pop-up banner at the top of the screen. I'll also put one in the description below. But the short version is that most locks are designed to be deterrents, whereas the LITELOK is actually a proper stopper. It has a baronium core in the middle of it, which is angle grinder resistant. And before anyone says they'll just use a bigger angle grinder to cut through it, well, it's also got an anti-twist shackle built in as well, which means I'll have to make 2 cuts, which means hopefully at that point they've been grinding away at it for long enough that the UK's overstretched police force might actually start taking notice. I own one, I use it, I trust it, and I trust it on my bike. Given everything that we've already established in this video, I'm not going to be getting that bike back anytime soon if it is taken. So that's why I put my faith in this lock. If you want to get one, you can use the affiliate links in the description below. Go check them out. You won't pay a single penny more, but you will be helping me produce more of these free-to-view videos. Right, back to the roads. And I mean that literally. Let's talk about the physical surfaces that we're riding on. The 2025 Alarm Survey put the roads that we're riding on, the backlog for repairs of that, in England and Wales at over £18 billion. That's a record figure, so much so that I actually did a video on it that you can again view by clicking the pop-up banner at the top of the screen. I didn't want to make that video. It's not a topic that I wanted to talk about. It's roads, for Christ's sake. But that number was such a staggering figure that I felt it needed its own video to talk about it. At current investment levels, it would take 12 years to clear that backlog. And my favourite stat, whilst doing the research around that staggering £18 billion, is that roads in England are roughly resurfaced, on average, once every 93 years. This is insane. That means your local B road probably hasn't had a resurfacing since the end of the First World War, and it's probably starting to look like it took a battering during the Second World War at this point. Now, for a car driver, that's a bit of an annoying journey, having to avoid a few potholes and having to bounce around a bit in your car. And you might end up getting a scratch wheel, and at worst case, you might pick up a puncture. But as I've already said, for a motorcycle, that is risk calculations every time you leave the house. With a bike, we have 2 contact patches, not much bigger than the palm of our hands. So there's no redundancy. There's no set of 4 wheels to keep us upright. There's no margin for error. So a pothole that we didn't see because it was full of last night's rain could mean the difference between us getting home safely or ending up and spending a night in A&E. And against that £18 million backlog, the government has pledged just £1.6 billion for the 2025-2026 year, which is a bit like being handed a mop and told to go and deal with the New Orleans flooding after Katrina passed through. It's just not sufficient. Now, to be fair, I don't want to spend the whole video ranting and raving and being that person. There is one genuine positive signal. The government is currently consulting on allowing motorcycles to use bus lanes by default across England. And that is great news, because this means that, well, it's going to hopefully reduce congestion. It'll make filtering safer for everyone, and it makes it a bit more predictable. And it's a net win overall. The only slight catch is that this was first tabled and trialled in the 1990s when I was 3 years old. Thatcher was Prime Minister at the time when someone actually first thought of this as an idea. So, yeah, there's progress, but perhaps it's not quite at the pace the situation demands. So here's where all of that information lands. Motorcycling reduces congestion. We know that. It reduces emissions. That's a fact. And it reduces the pressure on public transport. The evidence has been submitted to Parliament. It's on the public records, and it's not been disputed. And yet, every practical layer of real-world policy that changes the way that roads operate, the way that we use them, that enforces taxes and how money is spent on the roads, the planning and everything around city centre planning, it all makes motorcycling harder, more expensive and, well, less safe. Riders aren't asking for special treatment. They're just asking to be treated as part of the active solution instead of an inconvenience luxury vehicle, a category that nobody in the transport industry or planning industry quite knows what to do with. The evidence is there in front of you all. It has been for absolutely years. Bikes are a fantastic solution to everyday transport. And at some point, ignoring that, well, it stops being an oversight and starts being an active choice. Now, if you've stuck around this far, then thank you very much, and hopefully you've enjoyed the video. And maybe you'll consider watching last week's video, which you can see up here, where I talk about why so many riders here in the UK are quitting and walking away from the industry. And if you are a returning viewer or a new viewer and you've just found the channel, then please do consider subscribing by clicking on my face just down here. Thank you very much for watching. Ride safe, and hopefully I get to see you guys again next week.